So my topic today is calculated to lose friends and alienate people, but I need to explain it. And all that I ask is before you um, unsubscribe from me or whatever you do, send me hate mail, is that you watch the whole thing to see my thinking process. Um, Yesterday, I was watching the news and saw the bit about the indictment of Trump. And I looked at my wife and I said, I think we just reelected him. And I know that sounds strange, but follow what I'm talking about. So, okay, let me also lay my cards on the table. I'm doing this video on a YouTube channel where I have 460 some odd videos supporting Ukraine. Um, and there's only been 400 days in the war so far. And so I am full-throatedly supporting Ukraine, and that's why I'm talking about what I'm talking about. I'm also a Republican. I voted for Trump, couldn't stand the idea of Hillary. And I want you to understand that background before I talk about what I'm talking about. I also don't want Trump as my candidate going into the next election. In place of, I would prefer a Marco Rubio or a Mike Pence or somebody else that full-throatedly supports Ukraine because of Trump's position on Ukraine recently, which has been, I'll just make a deal and Ukraine's going to lose some land is what it looks like. So I'm putting all those pieces in place before I talk about what I'm talking about. Now, with that being said, I'm going to show you articles from CNN, Fox News, and Politico. I'll show you a tweet, and I'll show you a little bit of Mike Pence talking about this so that you can get a perspective of what I mean. I'm saying that if you are a liberal rejoicing that Trump's been indicted, don't rejoice because he's about to be reelected because of what you're doing right now. Because while you're looking at it going, ding dong, the witch is dead, much of the country is saying, wait a minute, this is a political witch hunt. And that's how they're going to be perceiving it. Rightly or wrongly, that is how they're going to be perceiving it. So here's the first article that we're going to review. It's from CNN Politics. Okay, so Donald Trump faces more than 30 counts related to business fraud in an indictment from Manhattan grand jury. Okay, that sounds terrible, but what it really is, as far as we know, now there could be some evidence I'm not seeing, and that's possible, so let me say that as a caveat. But there was a misdemeanor charge that the federal prosecutors declined to prosecute because it was kind of small, and then it's being bootstrapped. Bootstrapping means that you're moving it from one thing to parlay it into something larger, to make it they're trying to make it a, they're trying to make it a felony charge, and if you split it enough ways, that's how you get 30 counts, and they're also trying to make it a felony charge, and I guess the 30 counts relate to this one incident charged out 30 different directions or by doing. Okay, so Donald Trump faces more than 30 counts related to business fraud in an indictment from a Manhattan grand jury. Now, this is based on, as far as we know, a misdemeanor, which is less than the felony, that the federal prosecutors decide not to try to prosecute. They decided to leave it alone. The district attorney in New York decided that he was going to prosecute this, and he's trying to make this into a larger offense, into a felony charge. And in doing that, it's already past the statute of limitation for the misdemeanor, so it's really kind of an uphill battle. Trump is expected to appear in court on Tuesday. The charges are not publicly known at this time. That's true. What I told you is what everybody knows so far, but it could be more than that. I don't know that there is. There certainly had better be, because if they don't actually put Trump away, he's probably going to be the next Republican candidate, because there's going to be a huge backlash here. That's my estimation, and let me explain my case. His alleged role in hush money payment scheme to cover up involving an adult film star, Stormy Daniels, that dates back to the 2016. An American political system has never seen one of its ex-leaders confronted with criminal charges, let alone while running again for president. So, yes, nobody's above the law. We get that. Nobody is above the law. Anybody can be charged for anything. We get that. but it looks like it's politically motivated, especially when the prosecutor said, I'm running so that I can do this to Trump. And like, so I'm just saying, this is the perception that people will have, and that's going to put him back in office. Especially like, so look at next Tuesday when you see the optics as he turns himself in next Tuesday, and you see like it'll be splashed all over the newspapers. He'll come in, have his fingerprinting, or be in handcuffs or booked, or whatever it is. That is going to make Trump huge, almost like a martyr of some sort. Believe it or not, that's the way much of the country will see it. Okay, American political system which never seen one of its ex-leaders confronted with criminal charges, let alone while running again for president. Trump was claiming political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history. I believe this is a witch hunt, and you're going to see that kind of language. It's not just me saying that. I mean, I think people will feel that in their bones. Most Republicans feel that both impeachments were politically charged, politically motivated. I studied the U.S. Constitution for my doctoral dissertation. Like, that was a topic, the leadership assumptions of American statesmen during the Constitutional Convention and ratification debates. And I will tell you, I believe both of those impeachment trials were wrong-headed. They should not have happened. They were just because they were trying to prove a point or trying to knock Trump down so he couldn't have a second term. That is my gut feeling. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it, and that's how most Republicans see it. Okay, this evening we contacted Mr. Trump's attorney to coordinate his surrender to the Manhattan DA's office for arraignment on Supreme Court indictment, which remains under seal. The former president was initially asked to turn himself in to authorities in New York on Friday, the day after the grand jury voted to indict him. That was yesterday, and today is Friday. More time was needed, as the Secret Service that protects the former president needs to coordinate his surrender in New York. Think about the picture in the, like, how Americans will experience the picture of the former president coming in to turn himself in, let's say in handcuffs, with the Secret Service around him. That is going to be something that, if you think it was, it's kind of like this. If you think, ha, he did it, he's getting his justice, you see it one way. But if you think, hey, that was politically motivated, this is like a banana republic. If you look at what's going on with the arrest that's happening simultaneously in Russia, a Russian court ordering a Wall Street Journal reporter to jail, right? If you think that that's the kind of thing happening, then you are incensed at this prospect. And while I'm not incensed, I'm thinking, oh no, you just elected Trump. Okay, let me continue. Trump has long avoided legal consequences in his personal, professional, and political lives. He has settled a number of private civil lawsuits throughout the years and paid his way out of disputes concerning the Trump Organization, his namesake company. As president, he was twice impeached by the Democratic-led House, but avoided conviction by the Senate. And again, I think you'll find very few Republicans who will agree that either of those impeachment trials should have taken place. In December, the Trump Organization was convicted on multiple charges of tax fraud, though Trump himself was not charged in that case. Something in the organization was happening, but not necessarily Trump. I think that the unprecedented indictment of a former president of the United States on campaign finance issue is an outrage. Former Vice President Mike Pence told CNN's Wolf Blitzer in an interview on Thursday night. It appeared to millions of Americans to be nothing more than political prosecution that's driven by a prosecutor who literally ran for office on a pledge to indict the former president. That's exactly right. That's why I'm saying there's going to be sympathy that's going to come massively Trump's way. So you're going to see, watch the polls where Trump is today and where he is a month from now. He'll be up. I guarantee you he will be up in a month. Okay, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy vowed to launch an investigation. Outrageous, tweeted the House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan of Ohio. Senator Ted Cruz, Texas Republican, called the indictment completely unprecedented, a catastrophic escalation in the weaponization of the justice system. Ted Cruz has no love lost for Donald Trump after what happened in the 2016 election. But this is, again, if you're a Republican, you are seeing this as a terrible violation of the political system, weaponizing the justice system to go after your political opponents, and that's just not right. But at least one moderate Republican told CNN that he trusted the legal system. They found one moderate Republican? This is all they could, like, okay, I'm sure there's more than one. I'm sure there's a few of them, but wow, this is Like, there's not, I'm telling you, there's not a lot of Republicans who will see it the way that most liberals see it, like, good for him, he's getting what he deserves. I'm telling you, it's going to backfire. This is my gut. I'm just trying to interpret. Okay, Bragg, he's the investigator. Bragg's office had signaled as recently as early in March that they were close to bringing charges against Trump after they invited the ex-president to testify before the grand jury probing the hush money scheme. The long-running investigation first began under Bragg's predecessor, Cy Vance, when Trump was in office. It related to a $130,000 payment made by Trump's then personal attorney, Michael Cohen, to Daniels in late October of 2016, days before the 2016 presidential election, to silence her from going public about an alleged affair with Trump a decade earlier. Trump has denied the affair. According to court filings, Cohen's own federal prosecution, Trump's organization authorized payments to him totaling $420,000 to cover his original $130,000 payment and tax liabilities and reward him with a bonus. The Trump organization noted the reimbursements as legal expenses in its internal books, and Trump has denied knowledge of the payment. That's it from CNN. Now, let's look at another article, and this is from Fox News. So I'm going from kind of far left to kind of far right, and then we'll look at an article by Politico, so you can see something that's far left, far right, and then kind of just left. Politico is not exactly a straight shooter. They lean a little to the left, but then we'll kind of get a sense of what's going on. Okay, this is Jonathan Turley. He is a Georgetown University law professor, and he's providing some explanation here. The Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg indicted former President Donald Trump. We're all waiting to see the text of the indictment, and that's fair. We haven't seen what's in it, but it better be incredibly powerful. It better be so powerful that it puts Trump away for 100 years, or Trump will be the next president of the United States, or at least the next Republican nominee, if not the next president, because it's going to backfire in a huge way if it is a minor thing blown up in order to attack the political opponent on the other side. No Republican will feel that this is okay, and very few in the center will be okay with somebody weaponizing the political system. But history in this case and in this country is not on Bragg's side, says Turley. The only crime that's been discussed in this case is an unprecedented attempt to revive a misdemeanor for falsifying business documents that expired years ago. If that is still the basis of Thursday's indictment, Bragg could not have raised a weaker basis to prosecute the former president. Like, if that's all that he has, now maybe Bragg has more. I'm not, I can't see what's in it. Nobody will be able to see it until next week. But if that's all that he has, it's going to backfire. While Trump is the first former president indicted, he will not be the last if that's the standard for prosecution. But we'll have to wait to read the indictment to confirm the grounds. What we do know is the checkered history leading to this moment. The Justice Department itself declined to prosecute the federal election claim against Trump. There was ample reason to decline. The Justice Department went down this road before, and it did not go well. They tried to prosecute former Democratic presidential candidate Jonathan Edwards on even stronger grounds, which Turley said he also criticized at the time, and failed. In that case, campaign officials and donors were directly involved in covering up an affair that produced a child. Now, that's far more than what was going on here with Trump. At the time, Edwards' wife was suffering from cancer. The prosecution still collapsed. There was an upcoming election, but he also was a married man allegedly involved in an affair with a porn star. He was also a television celebrity who is subject to the standard of a morals clause that's triggered by criminal conduct or conduct that brings public disrepute, scandal, or embarrassment. These clauses are written broadly to protect the news organizations and their brand. Various presidents, from Warren Harding to Bill Clinton, have been involved in efforts to hush up affairs, showing that Trump only acted with the future election in mind. So that's what the prosecution is going to have to show if they're going to actually carry this through, rather than his current marriage or television contracts, is implausible. You simply can't prove that that was the only reason he was doing what he was doing. Was it part of it? Perhaps. But he also has his own marriage to consider. He also has his own his NBC contract with The Apprentice, those kind of things to have considered. So this bootstrapping theory. Now, what's a bootstrapping theory? So Turley explains in another article, but the idea for many months, this bootstrapping theory has been put out there. The idea that you could take a misdemeanor under a New York law that has expired, that has a 2-year statute of limitations from something that was 5, 6 years ago, and revive it by connecting it to a federal crime, in this case, federal election violation. Now, there's a problem with that. First of all, it's a federal crime that the Department of Justice chose not to prosecute. Bragg's own predecessor declined to prosecute it, but he's attempting to bootstrap that federal crime into a state case. And if that's the basis for indictment, I think it's outrageous. It's legally pathetic. Okay, get back to the other article. So that's the bootstrapping theory. The office has already been tarnished by the conduct of the prosecutors who pushed this theory. 2 prosecutors, Carrie Dunn and Mark Pomerantz, then resigned from the Manhattan DA's office. Pomerantz did something then that some of us view as highly unprofessional and an improper act. He published a book on the case against Trump, a person who is still under investigation and not charged, let alone convicted of any crime. Bragg ran on his pledge to bag Trump. Like, that's what he ran as prosecutor for. I'm going to put Trump away. It really did not matter what the crime might be. Now, the bank and tax fraud issues were also a focus of the Justice Department, which again did not charge on those theories. So the long and short of it is, it looks like a very weak case. And if it is as weak as Turley's talking about, I'm predicting that Trump will be better off, not worse off, in his bid for the election than before. And the Democrats are the ones putting him in that position. It's almost like they want him to be the Republican candidate. Okay, I'm not saying that they do, but it's almost like that. Now there's more backlash. Here's Politico. DeSantis, who's no big friend of Trump. Remember, Trump was just calling him Ron DeSanctimonious. DeSantis calls Trump's indictment an un-American, says he won't assist in extradition. This is from Politico. Ron DeSantis on Thursday blasted the indictment of Donald Trump, vowed that the state will not assist in extradition. He goes on, the weaponization of the legal system. And again, this is the way that Republicans will see it, and a large swath in the middle will see it. The weaponization of the legal system to advance a political agenda turns the rule of law on its head. It's un-American. He said on Twitter, here's the actual Twitter comment here where he's saying it. It goes on just a little bit more. DeSantis' stance on the indictment was being closely anticipated because, as a likely political rival, he's been hit hard by Trump. He has the most to lose, but he's still not doing it. Again, most Republicans see it this way. Okay, one more thing. I'm going to show you Mike Pence talking to Wolf Blitzer about this very thing. So here we go.
First of all, thanks for having me on. Thanks very much for joining us on this truly historic, important day in American history. I want to begin with the New York grand jury, as you well know, as all of our viewers know by now, voting to indict the former president of the United States, Donald Trump. He's now the first former president in American history to be criminally charged. It's a really significant development. I want to get your reaction to this.
Okay, before you get Pence's reaction, remember, Pence and Trump don't exactly have love lost either. Remember, January 6th was a pretty horrific event, okay? And Pence has, he felt like he was thrown under the bus, and so he's not exactly pro-Trump in that kind of sense anymore. But here's what he has to say.
Unprecedented development.
Well, I think the unprecedented indictment of a former president of the United States on a campaign finance issue is an outrage. And it appears to millions of Americans to be nothing more than a political prosecution that's driven by a prosecutor who literally ran for office on the pledge to indict the former president.
But it wasn't just...
Okay, so like hear that. This was a misdemeanor. It was a slap on the wrist. Hey, you got to pay a fine. You shouldn't have done this with that. You should move your money. It was not a felony kind of charge. Now, that is, if it is what we think it is, it could be something more, and we'll see next week. So don't hate on me. I'm just telling you what we think or what we understand of it so far.
Yes, Mr. Vice President, excuse me for interrupting. It wasn't just the prosecutor, the district attorney in New York who did this. This was a grand jury of some 23 people, and you need a majority, 12, to go ahead and criminally indict.
Well, I understand that, and been a long time.
Okay, a majority of 23 people in New York who will indict Trump. You know that in New York, they're very heavily liberal, very heavily left, very heavily wanting to do that. This is not a big, a high bar for that, but that they would use it to potentially weaponize this is absolutely absurd if that is what's going on. And it was, I don't blame the grand jury, but the prosecutor appears to have an axe to grind.
Understand that, and been a long time since I was in law school, Wolf. But I remember the old saying, "You can indict a ham sandwich." Right? The threshold, the burden of proof is very low. Prosecutors make decisions, discretionary decisions about what they bring all the time. Federal prosecutors passed on this. The Manhattan DA initially delayed it, passed on it. But when you have an attorney general in New York and a Manhattan DA that targeted one particular American in their campaigns, I think that offends the notion of the overwhelming majority of the American people who believe in fairness, who believe in equal treatment before the law. And this appears to be just one more example, Wolf.
Okay, as you're listening to that, if you're going, wait a minute, he should get equal treatment before the law just like anyone else, we should prosecute him. Yes, you're right, if he has done something that merits it. But if it appears that the crime is being blown up out of proportion into something larger than what it was that doesn't rate, it's going to backfire. That's my entire argument here, and I think that's where we're going.
And Wolf, you know, you're seen all over the world. The message that this sends to the wider world is a terrible message about the American justice system. And I would that this Manhattan DA would have thought better of it and put the interest of the nation first.
And again, that is the way that Republicans are going to see it. That's the way that a large swath of the middle are going to see it. I don't expect liberals to see it that way. And if you're in the liberal camp and you don't see it that way, I don't fault you for that. But I need you to understand that this is the way that so many conservatives, so many populists, especially populists who are all in with Trump, are going to see that. Just watch. Now, I'd like to get your reaction, but don't just lambaste Trump or yell pro MAGA. Tell me what you think of my analysis. Am I flawed? Am I sound? What do you think? I'm curious what you think. My whole reason for bringing this up is because it affects what's going on in Ukraine. And I think this was, if you're pro-Ukraine, I think this indictment was actually a really bad thing, because it's going to make Trump more of a martyr and get the sympathy of a large swath of the population that maybe even had kind of written them off beforehand. Okay, that's what I think. I would like to know what you think. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.